Divine Source, Great Spirit, Ancient Ones, Ancestors, beloved beings of light, Master Angels, Master Healers, Master Teachers, please come be with us this day, anchoring this space sacred in service to love, in service to truth, and in service to the highest good of all. And so it is.
Welcome to Talking Spirit. I think we're on episode 6. My name is Jutta, and I have with me again my friend Elizabeth.
Greetings, welcome.
So, we've been sort of floating in the idea of needs and practically what does it mean to have our needs met on our awakening journey, and do we always know exactly what we need, and is awakening personal, and the things that seem to occur to us on our journey, are they personal, or is there possibly something higher operating that is orchestrating scenarios and situations and people and things and places for the highest good? Not mine, not yours, not your parents or sisters or friends, anything, nothing personal, but just the highest good, period. So we've just kind of been discussing those things here and there in relation to what's happening for us, what has happened for us on our path. And yeah, we can just share a little bit about our experiences, because awakening is kind of a wacky road. We had sort of the Alice in Wonderland vibe, for last episode, and it really is a strange journey at times. And I've always felt grateful for for hearing other people's experiences and what they've gone through, what's helped them, what hasn't really helped them, and apply that to my own experiences and put my own experiences into more context that, help me relax more and accept, what's happening. So again, I think we're always in the same boat with these kind of topics. Anything could come out, so we're just in this space of receiving the messages that are meant to come through for us and for you and for the whole.
I was just in the meditation just now, listening to you, of why the prayer at the beginning of these talks, and we had a little mention of that earlier today. And it's because it's not personal. There's not a person here that has a message that can be delivered that would be helpful. There's nothing about me as Elizabeth, really, other than I seem to be a body that seems to be a vehicle for delivering a message, but that it's not coming from me. And, that's like a deep, deep message that I knew when I was little in a way, but it seemed like there were people telling me how the world worked and how things were to go down and what I should be doing with myself. And it didn't jive. It didn't really resonate for me. But, we kind of fall into step with the world, it seems. And so this prayer to be spoken through is such an answer to that deep inner call that we have, which is, this isn't about me. And this isn't about a personality looking to be somebody or get something. If there is a personality in this moment, it's wanting to answer the call of my heart to serve my purpose. And so the prayer for me is so vital, because the personality, of course, is still here. It seems to still be here, right? So it has its preferences, it has its way of defaulting into certain ways of doing things. But that's not my happy place. My happy place is saying, Spirit, you do it. You do it. Not as I'm so pitiful and I can't do it, but as a place of real acknowledgement and recognition that of myself, I can do nothing. And that this journey of awakening and healing, I know nothing, truly nothing that's helpful about it. And so it can be a real mind bender, because we know that intuitively. We come in here knowing that, and then we get all this garbage that we seem to pick up to try to fit in and make it work here. And we just know it's not right. And it makes us sick and suffering trying to jive these worlds that are so different into our experience. And so again, just the acknowledgement of there has to be a force greater than this little personality called Elizabeth that's operating. And because if there isn't, we're all screwed, right? I mean, if there isn't, we're all just really doomed. And why would we ever have a conversation like this? So again, there's just this real deepening that happens seemingly throughout the path of, wow, yes, I'm brilliant as the light, brilliant and in my magnitude in a way, and yet in this other way, it's this real paradox we were talking about before, that I don't really know what's for the highest good, so I've got to link up and sync up with that force that does know, that is speaking through me right now. You know, I had somebody the other day give me a reflection of like, oh, you think you're so great. And the message to that person has been over and over again, this is the best I know to do, is to ask for the highest and best good, to be shown, to be spoken through, to be done through. Because if it was at the personality place, run. Run for the hills. Because I, as Elizabeth, have really nothing to offer. So anyway, it's just what was showing up. It's like we need the prayer to say, do through me. Link me up, sync me up, and show me what would be helpful, because I really don't know. That's the deep wisdom of the path. It's like, let me show you. You think you know how this all goes down or how it works? Like, we'll be humbled over and over again, not because the spirit is mean or nasty or anything like that, but because the ego thinks it knows what's best.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, and probably for anybody that's listening too, like, we've come to a place of acceptance in a way that, you know, whatever I think I know got me into a place of not super great experience, you know, stuck in a job, maybe a 9-to-5 job that I hate, or having awful, you know, family relationships that do not serve my highest good, and it's making me sick and it's making them sick, or whatever it might be. I think we've kind of come to accept that whatever we think we know got us into those scenarios that don't feel expansive. They don't feel like they're really getting us anywhere. And, you know, this isn't really about getting anywhere, but just energetically, there's no purpose. So that place of I don't really know got us to today. Because I think even the way the podcast, or, you know, whatever we're calling it, this started, us recording it, is like, you know, you reached out and you didn't really know. It wasn't like an idea you had. It's a thought that came to you. And at the time, I sort of had in mind too, like, oh, it would be nice to do some recordings or put out some videos. But by myself, I was too in my head about it, and I just couldn't get over myself. You know, so even things like these recordings, they're coming from a place of I don't really know what's helpful, and we're just doing our best to try and listen to the guidance from that beyond here voice to see what's really helpful, because we don't want to be stuck in our little personalities and, you know, in the day-to-day 3D stuff. So
yeah, you know, left to my own devices, I would not be having this conversation here, and I certainly would not be sharing it on YouTube or on Facebook or anywhere else. I mean, I've heard the call and had specific guidance my whole life that I'm to be sharing this way. And the God's honest truth is, like, I haven't not wanted to do it. Thank you, no. real like, oh yeah, arrogance. People think arrogance is like, oh, I think I'm so great. It can go the other way as well. It's like, I'm not going to share myself with anyone or anything. It can go so many different ways. One person can want the stage and want center stage all day long, and that's their ego dynamic. And others of us can say, I'll be fine in the background and I'll go up to the mountaintop and I'll just sit and meditate.
Yeah, let me go in a cave.
Yeah, and not let anybody know about me or my light.
Yeah.
Not as a me personality, but as a vehicle for the spirit.
Well, it's about the call, right? Whatever. It's like, it's so wacky in a way. Like, whatever you hear as a call for you now, you're going to have resistance to it no matter what, unless you're fully enlightened. And you're just like, oh, this thing? Oh, great. Yeah, let's do it, But I'm not there. I'm not there yet. But yeah, exactly.
It's different for everybody how these dynamics show up and what might be helpful for everybody. It is, again, an individualized, it's a universal thing that we all are here to awaken, but it's individualized in terms of how the spirit needs to work with us, because we all have seemingly different programming culturally, or programming from our family, or programming from our country, or stuff that seems to be past lives and trauma and drama. And, there's just no one size fits all. And so there's no like, this is how you do it, that's ever going to be the Band-Aid that's going to cover everything up, other than in a way to say, you got to go inside, you got to link up and sync up with the spirit, and then you got to really learn how to discern the intuition and the guidance, and then decide, are you going to get over yourself and follow what you're being guided to do? And again, for me, we talked last time about Malidoma Somé. He was somebody who helped me in my journey. And he was one of the many reflections in my life that said, as a spirit messenger, you've got to share your wisdom, meaning spirit's wisdom through you. The way that I seem to communicate might be helpful to somebody. That's true for all of us. We're just talking about me, seemingly the personality of Elizabeth, right? Yeah. That's true for everybody, but he's one of countless messengers that said, get over yourself. Could you please get over yourself? And it took me still more years to decide, would I step a little further off the ledge, right? I mean, I had done so in so many ways. I had surrendered in so many ways, give up the job, give up this, that, and the other, And yet, they're just those walls that we will hit at times where we say, not gonna do it. And then maybe somebody will come across our path that can shed some light on, like, why are you hung up? Maybe there's something you could do about it. And so we kind of got into some of these ideas of this talk and the inspiration for the talk of having been in our own journey of purification and healing for many years, and then working with others. And working with others is like, there are a lot of people these days. I just heard another person on like a YouTube saying like, oh, become a coach. Let me teach you how to become a coach, kind of an advertisement. And there's so many people now that, oh, I'm going to be a life coach, and I'm going to be a spiritual coach, and I'm going to be a tarot reader, and I'm going to do this and that and the other. There's this blossoming because the call is getting louder for people that they can't deny it. Yeah. But, it's showing up in this broad way of people wanting to answer the call, which is beautiful and exciting. But it's also like, it's sticky business, facilitating anyone. Because if you're facilitating people from the personality, you're going to facilitate from your ego dynamics and your structures. And that can be really hard, really difficult. And it's a different ball of wax if you're going to be facilitating people to wake up. That's a different animal than just like, oh, use your spiritual gifts to like manifest a better life kind of thing, right? So what Yuta and I feel called to is the awakening journey, not just the healing, like use your gifts kind of journey, but the like wake up, snap out of the dream. And so there's just a different, way that kind of calls forth the reflections from others and calls forth like what's required. And so again, there's just, we've both have lots of different reflections of people that have called upon us to say, hey, what do you know? How can you help me get over myself? And often there's a gung-ho in the beginning, like, yeah, I really want to do this. And then as the guidance starts to come in, then the personality structures start to show up a little more. And it's like, well, maybe I don't like how you're saying this, or maybe I don't like that guidance, or maybe, I don't really want to get over myself. And that's fine. But, it's like, it's such a cauldron of stuff, big stuff. And, it's not for everybody. I kind of as a kid thought, oh, everybody's going to want to wake up and heal. Like I thought, because that was in my heart at a very young age. I was like, that's what I'm here for. I knew it. And I was looking around like, oh, it doesn't seem like anybody wants it. I remember as a kid, there was a book, it was like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And I think it was like about the process of death and dying kind of a thing. She was a psychologist, I think. And there was a book like that in my house as a kid. And I remember reading it, and it was like such food for me, for my soul, because they were talking about these deep things about this journey, in a way, the spiritual journey. And yet I didn't see anybody living like that in my life. And it was a real like, wow, don't you want to heal this stuff? Don't you want to feel good and live expansively? And it was regularly, these reflections seemed to be saying no, no, no. And so, it seemed to me like, yeah, that there was just not really an answer to my deep inner call. But the good news is it's not personal, because the call is the call, and it's beyond any bodies, and it's just what's happening. It's just what we're here for. And so, yeah, it just, but it seems like you have to make a choice. Or something that we were talking about. It seems like even though it's impersonal, it still seems like the person has to make a choice.
Right. Well, I know for myself, when I was at that point where I was like, okay, I have nothing more in the world right now that interests me. I don't really want to keep working my job. I don't hate it, but I just don't have any interest anymore. It's kind of boring now. And, sort of, I always call it like my life was sort of running out, like all the normal stuff that everybody was doing, living life in an apartment with work, that was kind of running out in my mind. And I had some calls with David Hoffmeister, who's a Course in Miracles teacher, and I was listening to his teachings and, teachings from other people that were in his community at the time. And it just was like, it felt so fresh and like it was like there was alive. A spark. Yeah. Like it was just like, oh, these people, they're every moment seems like, this is kind of my reception of it at the time. It just felt like there was such an inspiration and such a joy of being alive that I was like, well, I don't really feel that great to be alive, like I want that. That sounds good. So it was like, I don't know how to do that on my own. And so I applied to join this community. And I got there. I was accepted. I had a call with one of the people there, and almost like an interview, to see if it would be a really good fit or not, because it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But I was accepted, and I went there, and it was in Hawaii at first, and almost immediately, like the first house meeting, let's say, I was like, what is going on here? Nobody's getting any help. Like people were sharing like problems they were having, crying and all kinds of stuff. Not really looping, but just it was an expression session. So people were like kind of in a circle and just like, here's what is going on for me today. I'm going to leave it on the altar, so to speak.
Got it.
The spirit can handle it. But I didn't get that. I was just like, this person is having problems and nobody is helping them. What is going on? So I'm like, I didn't share. I didn't share at that meeting, but I'm just like sitting there like, this ain't right. Like, what's happening, And so I ended up talking with the person that was kind of overseeing the volunteers at that time. And I just shared this with her, and we took a walk around the neighborhood, and I shared it with her, and she kind of gave me a bigger context. This is kind of what's happening.
Right.
This is why it looks this way.
Right.
Like we're not addressing these problems because they're actually not real problems. Right. There's something moving through, and it's being shared from a place of, I don't like how this feels,
Right.
and I would like to be wrong
Yeah.
about how
Yeah.
I see this situation. So I'm sharing this right now, and I'm putting it on the altar, and please, Spirit, help me see this differently.
Yeah, it's sweet.
You know, this is a bit language from the Course, but I needed that context to really fully be able to relax into these kind of expression session meetings there, because like I said, it felt like, from my place of what I saw, what I thought I knew, is that people were struggling and not getting any help, because I couldn't see them getting any help. I just saw them crying and being upset or being angry or being jealous or whatever it was. So those kind of moments, I think, happen over and over, where something's happening and you have your reference point, so to speak. I have my reference point of what I think is going on, and I'm interpreting, and I may not know that I'm interpreting, and so I believe in what I think and feel in the moment, and it could be really distressing. So, you know, for me at that time, I needed to have some help, because I didn't know what I believed to be true. So I needed to have the space to share with somebody who seemed to have gone before me and could see a bigger picture, and, you know, even just like an outside perspective, like, here's what I think is going on. This feels awful. Like, what are they, you know, I feel like I'm being mistreated or whatever.
Right.
Whatever it might be. And so being aware of needing help is so important when you need it.
It's kind of the basis of
Yeah.
the spiritual path in a way. I mean, ultimately there's the idea, you know, that you go home alone in a sense, right? That the inside job is solitary in a way, you might say. And yet it seems like everybody that really walks a path does so with support throughout, in large part. You know, having either just a one-on-one facilitator or a spiritual guide or a community, a sangha, or whatever. And, you know, again,
or just a friend that you feel really like on the
Totally.
same level with. Like, you understand, like, I want to say something to you without you feeling like it's real.
personal to right.
Because I don't want it to
Right.
be real. Like, I want to share this to see that I'm wrong in some way, because it feels bad.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, again, the idea that we've shared throughout our talks is like, your inspiration to get on your path is a little different than mine in some respects. Like, we both felt the call early in our lives, and that was a given. But some of my healing seemed to have looked like it was in part around the idea of a mother who seemed to have had the journey of alcoholism, and the kind of devastation to my life that seemed to have kind of brought about. You know, I see it differently today, but at the time it seemed like my mother was this force of nature that was really destructive in my mind and in my life. And so that was part of what kind of kicked off my journey. And then also I seem to have had a 10-year relationship where the guy I had been in a relationship left me after I'd moved to Manhattan. Got my own, you know, got an apartment that the two of us only could share, you know, and next thing you know, no, I'm not coming to New York. So those two things were kind of the pressure cookers that drove me deeper. The healing process had already started, but they drove me pretty deep in. And my mother had almost lost her life from internal bleeding at one point, and that kicked me into a deeper, like, oh my God, I really need some help. And so I learned about a place called the Karen Foundation, which I feel inspired to talk about. And it was a place that people went for drug and alcohol addiction, but there was also a family program, which I felt really called to go to. And so it was like a week long, or maybe 2 weeks or 10 days or something. And it was for people that, you know, were friends, family, etc., of people with really devastating sickness. And so I thought I was going there to learn more about the problems of the people in my life. And very quickly was shown, no, you're the problem, Elizabeth, not as a, oh, wrongness, but as a, oh, it's your own mind and your own reaction to things. And so I got a mirror right back onto myself dynamically at a time when I thought I was just going to go learn how to manage the unmanageable people in my life. No, I was told you're unmanageable in your own thinking.
Damn.
And I was told your thinking stinks dynamically. And they were right. And they saved my life. And I thought to myself, who are you people? You know, I mean, they were experts at taking people like me through this, you know, big anxiety, big depression, big, you know, I just want to die. I didn't really take any actions ever in my life to try to kill myself, but that was kind of my state of mind all the time. And so they, you know, they recommended when I left that week-long program or however long it was that I consider going and finding 12-step support like Al-Anon or CODA or whatever. And I did end up going through almost every 12-step program to check it out. And what I found was every 12-step program was talking about the stinking thinking of the mind, that the dis-ease internally was a spiritual state, that it was a spiritual malady in every 12-step. It didn't matter if you talked about sex or gambling or drugs or alcohol or relationships as being the seeming problem. They all were saying, no, it's your disconnect from the divine, and it's your stinking thinking, and it's a spiritual malady that has to be treated with a solution that's spiritually based. Hallelujah. And so for a short time, I had that kind of support as well, of looking at myself and having people that had a greater context, as you said, that said, hey, your head's up your butt. You are completely confused about yourself and the world and everything else. And that was at the same time that the Course came to me, you know, so 25 some years ago. And, you know, I had to have people that had a greater vision, a much greater vision. I mean, a dynamically greater vision, right, of what was possible for me. And when they told me that my stinking thinking was my problem, I didn't always like it. I did not find that to be really acceptable a lot of the times. And when they told me to do service and to get out of myself, I wasn't thrilled about it or whatever. But they knew they had an answer to whatever their inner disease was. They had an answer for it. And like you, I wanted to feel happy and grateful and joyful and at peace in my mind. And, you know, I found people, thank God, over and over again. And I didn't always stick with them. I didn't always stay a long time. I seem to have been a mover along my path into different arenas. But everywhere I've been through these 25 years, there's been a messenger saying it's not personal. This is the one mind looking to wake up. And you're asleep and you're unconscious in a lot of ways. And we're going to make these things conscious by taking a look at them. And it often felt like I was being shattered. And I was at the personality level. It was like a cold, hard glass of water in the face.
Yeah. For some reason, I'm thinking of Yes Man. You know, in a way, like all of us are going through what Jim Carrey goes through in that movie. Like, we don't, at some point, we realize we don't really like our lives. We don't like people. Whatever, like, we're not happy.
Being on the hamster wheel of making money. And,
it's just kind of like, oh yeah, how was your day? Oh yeah, it was okay. That's not really, deep down, we don't really want to just have, oh yeah, okay days. So, you know, I think there's a phase in the very beginning when we, you know, get on this journey and realize something's not right, something's not working, where we have to say yes to a lot of stuff that maybe doesn't make sense in the moment. Totally. So, you know, like when a teacher, you find somebody that feels helpful to you, and they may share things with you that seem crazy. Sometimes, actually, the best thing is to just say, okay, I'm going to try that. Even though some part of you is saying, like, this is ridiculous. Like, you can watch that happening. Like, this is ridiculous. And let me just remember why I came to this person for help.
Right.
Because I don't know what I'm doing. So they seem like they're happy. So I'm going to just let them help me for some time and, and just take in as much as I can from them, even if it sounds mean or harsh or like, why would you make me do that? I just did it. Or you want me to do that again? You know, like I had 7 years in spiritual community, and there were so many times where it's like, well, I know how to do that. No, go do it now this way. There's something there for you that you haven't looked at yet. So go do it this way. And I would do it this way, and it's like, you know, start out like, why am I doing this? This is so stupid. They don't know what they're doing. I know what I'm doing. Yeah, right. And it's very, very humbling. You kind of have to expect that you're going to be humbled on the spiritual journey, and it's not fields of flowers, you know, like it's not a feel-good sort of thing a lot of the times. That's a result, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there can be some core issues that you can like have the spirit drop through dynamically, like deep down, fast. You get through to a core issue and it's healed, and it's like hallelujah.
Oh God!
But a lot of the times it seems to be the onion peeling, one layer at a time, kind of a thing, sloughing off the dead skin. You know, deleting programs that are really pervasive and pernicious in your mind. It's not, you know, it's not a fun journey. And, you know, it's like if you really want to wake up, it's got to all go. And that, you know, most of us aren't taken to that place of realization when we're not ready for it. But, you know, it's like, yeah, you got to really, in a certain way, you have to understand that it's a deep, deep dive, or else you're just going to be in constant resistance. You know, I have somebody a young, you know, 16-year-old that showed up in my life that I was working with for a bit. And it's like they want out. You know, I knew at 16 I wanted out of my suffering, but I wasn't ready to really understand that I was responsible for how I dealt with my mind stuff. That there wasn't going to be somebody, a parent, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a family member, a whatever, that was going to fix it for me. You know, that I had to really take responsibility for myself. And, you know, if you don't want it, it's just like you're being dragged across the cement and you're just getting bloodied and it feels like hell. You know, and even when you think you want it, you know, I had years of like, I know that this is my only answer. I know it's my only answer, and yet I still had my foot on the gas and on the brake at the same time and wondered why I was just like burning out left and right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like it's a tough nut to swallow sometimes.
Yeah. So there has to be like, I think I shared this too, like when we talked about this idea of this topic, like we have to be really, really, like really like fine-tuned in terms of how we're actually feeling authentically. Like, because, you know, a lot of us have this, like, we find out about awakening. We know it's possible. You know, I come from A Course in Miracles. It tells us awakening is inevitable. Great. And, you know, like that's the only reason really to be here. Like you want to wake up. And so there's this part in the mind that wants to be so good, and like it just you know, there's this yes man phase of like, okay, yes, this is working. I don't really like it, but I will just accept it for now because I have to just remind myself I don't know what's happening and I don't know what's right for me, what's best for me. And there seem to be these other times where saying yes, even if you think you want to, because somewhere you know, like you just shared, like, of course this is the right thing, of course this is going to be helpful. Sometimes it's almost like it's not enough, because it's not, maybe it's just you're saying yes to the wrong thing in the moment, even if it looks like it's going to be helpful. You know, like you've been following maybe a certain teacher and you love their teaching and it's like, oh, this is really speaking to me. Maybe there's a place where it's like, I don't know why it's not making sense, or I don't get inspired by this anymore, but you have loved it so much you want to continue saying yes and keep taking it in, and you can really like confuse yourself if you're not paying attention to the authentic experience. Because sometimes you can fall into smallness by staying in situations that have been really helpful in the past. Like, like being in a spiritual community.
Yeah.
I couldn't stay.
Yeah, I've had so many times in my journey where I thought, this is it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love these people. I love this way of looking at things. I love the support. I love the community. I love it. I love it. I'll be here forever.
Exactly.
And
same.
it's like, yeah, no, you won't, actually. No, actually, you won't. Mm-hmm. And, it can be a real doozy. Like when I went into the yoga community, it was right about the year mark where I would decide if I was going to become like official, where, I would be staff. I was a volunteer for that year. It was 24/7, just as if I was staff, but there was a distinction that they made for themselves about it. And so, I was in the vortex of where am I to be? What's helpful here? And I got bounced out so hard. And when I bounced out into like house sitting. A woman had an apartment in Soho or something. She was from Europe and she was like traveling or something. So she asked if I wanted to watch her place and like apartment sit or house sit. And I did. And so I bounced out of spiritual community back into the like, what am I doing now? No container, hell on earth, no purpose, no clarity about what I was to do. It was so hard, but it was like, I wasn't to be there. I wasn't to stay there. And I could have parked it. If I had been left to my own devices, I might have tried to make myself fit in there. Mm-hmm. And what happened instead was a deepening at looking at all the crap in my mind and the anxiety and the thinking I could figure it out and thinking I could, like, should I get a job again? Oh, just the mental mind twists. That container gave me some certainty and some surety and some structure and some support. And then there was a time where I had to be back feeling like I was flapping with my butt out in the world, like on my own again. Mm. And I never was on my own, but it felt that way. And I could never have seen some of those parts of my mind, without being thrown out in a way. Yeah. Of course, Spirit didn't throw me out, but it felt like that at the time. It felt like, why have you forsaken me? Oh, I was terrified. Mm-hmm. And so, but still, even those gyrations, again, it's back to this, it's not personal. It's kind of the journey in a way. And it may look slightly different for your journey, but, they're kind of these common threads of untangling our minds that just seem to be part of the journey. And as you said, there's some things that just are not going to feel helpful. But years later, you look back on them and you go, oh my God, thank God for that person. Thank God for that message. Thank God for that piece of direction that I thought was so over the top or so off base, Mm-hmm. I mean, it kind of bottom lines, one of the great things about the 12-step arena, if you ever check it out, it's like, it doesn't matter if you're looking at something of like an Al-Anon or, a severe, like, people that have suffered from like something like heroin addiction. Ultimately, it's the same thing, which is life or death. Like bottom lining it, that's the beauty of the 12 steps. Bottom lining it into that, it's life or death. It's the same thing with the awakening. Do you want to be dead and asleep, or do you want to be awake and alive? Do you want to be stuck in the muggle and the soup of I don't know what's what, I can't see what's what, I'm miserable and want to die every day? It's just like, oh. Mm. So, but to get out of that, you've got to get into the impersonal. You and have to get know. Yeah, it's such a paradox. It's such a mind bender. It can sound like we're talking in circles, because in a way we are, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But I think it gets really fun. Like for me, the spiritual journey got really fun when I realized I don't know, and I have a helper with me that I can access. Mm-hmm. Like I learned to listen to that inner voice. Mm-hmm. I can feel it. It's different for everybody. Sometimes people ask me, how do you hear voices? No. Sometimes I hear my own voice, but I know it's not me talking. A lot of times I see images, whatever. But I have that. And now, now that a lot of the clearing out has kind of taken place, and it's still going to, but it's not so intense all the time anymore. Right. Now there's like a fun bit, like, oh, you want me to do a recording? Mm-hmm. I don't know about that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's kind of fun, but also like, I don't know, like, am I gonna make sense? Like, there's a lot of stuff still getting washed in these things, but it's still like, oh, I'm doing recordings. That's kind of cool. I didn't think I would ever do that. Yeah. So the spirit is just, when you drop a lot of the like initial big chunks, the spirit, it wants to just have fun with you, actually.
Yeah, I mean, we don't feel good in our littleness.
No, that's the thing.
And that's what you're speaking to. Is like, why do people develop drug and alcohol addictions? Because they like the lightness that it initially gives them. They like the sense of expansion into some part of themselves, that they don't feel so plugged into. And, rather than go, oh, well, that's possible in my mind and in my heart with the spirit, people keep going back to a seeming form. Oh, I'll get it through sex, I'll get it through drugs, I'll get it through whatever. Running really aggressively, I'll get myself into a state of mind if I run marathons all the time. People try to get that, as we've talked about before, with the seeming body stuff. But what we're really saying is, I don't want to live from the past. I don't want to live in yesterday's wisdom or knowing. I don't want to live in history. I don't want to live in the I know mind. I want to live in the, wow, this is pretty weird and interesting and miraculous. Like, what is going on here? Well, this is so interesting.
And when you get certain guidance from the spirit, what he, she, however whatever it is, for me, doesn't matter. When you get guidance that you didn't expect, you're being told you can do so much more. You're so much bigger than you think. Yeah. And like, for us, me and Elizabeth, like, we have started working with some people here and there. And when I was in spiritual community too, I was in those leadership roles, and I was always working with people, counseling people, and part of me was so like, I can't do that. Like, I've never done that. How do I do that? Yeah, but that's your role now. Right. So you can do it, and you just let the words come out. You let the hug come out, or whatever it needs to be in this moment. You let the firmness come out, and it's going to be really inspiring. Maybe not right away, but you're going to see, like, there's something that you can let move through you that's going to feel really expansive. It's going to strengthen you and give you confidence, real confidence.
Yeah, I keep having the last couple of days, maybe because this talk was going to come in this way, because we kick around stuff and then we just sort of drop it. And then yesterday it was like, what is it going to be? You bring it through fully. And she did. And this is great. But I was having the whole idea of like a Buddhist nun, somebody that takes vows to be a Buddhist nun. That's what was showing up in the imagery. And, it's like, oh, I've entered this Buddhist convent, let's say, and I'm, a month into the teachings, and I'm green and I'm fresh. Well, often if you listen to people in those arenas, they'll be sent right away out into the village, go give the teachings of the Buddha. And, you hear the story of, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know. I'm brand new. How could I do that? And there's this idea of get over yourself. And you're not the one that's going to be doing the teaching. And you have to give it away to reinforce it within yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to learn how to go from the personal to the impersonal to become that channel. And everybody that I know that has been on this kind of journey, they're always amazed when they find themselves more and more in the channel where they're just being moved, where they're just being spoken through, where they're just being the grace in action without thinking about it. We're not talking about getting into a state of mind where you're doing. We're not talking about, oh, I've learned how to like play the piano and now I can do it.
I've learned how to do people, it. Yeah. And now I just do the thing.
It's different, when you get to the place where it's so ingrained in your beingness that when you play the piano, you are a channel for grace, magnificent beyond anything, It's like that's where the people that become really big sometimes on the world stage is because they're tapping into the grace. They're not present. It becomes impersonal.
Right.
And that's why so many hearts and minds can receive it, because it's impersonal. If it was from the personality, it wouldn't have the same juju on it. It's just a different animal. So, we get sent out right away. This is us answering that call of the spirit to say, it's not about you, Elizabeth. It's not about you, Yuta. It's about letting the message of the divine through you. And here we are. We're being the impersonal. We're still talking about our stories and the personality and blah, blah, blah. But we're really here to just make space to say, yes, okay, got it. We're here. Sitting in the seat. Because again, if left to myself, I wouldn't be doing this.
Me neither.
And that's part of the gift of collaboration and showing up to support one another. I could feel that call in Yuta's heart to expand. I have the same call in my heart to expand. Okay, Spirit's like, okay, bring it together and make yourselves available. And then together we have fun. Whereas by myself, I feel pretty good now, like doing a channeling of a message with the Spirit. But this has been much more fun. Much more fun, much more interesting, much more, And when we're making our videos and doing all that, it's not all on one of our backs. I'm doing graphics, you're just doing the sound. We collaborate on the verbiage and it's not burdensome. Whereas when it, for me, was in the personal, like, oh, it's my job to perform and make money and I have to exchange for this and I have to deliver the goods. That was like a noose around my neck. It was awful. Could I do it? Did I do it pretty well? Yeah, I seemed to, but I hated it. It's much more fun to be in the impersonal, where you're just making space for spirit. And it lightens the load of personal responsibility, which we've also talked about. That's the nightmare of all nightmares.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
We had talked earlier about some movies we watched. Is there any juice on any of those? They were floating around.
Well, I guess, we had talked about, like, when you get to this place where you're coming with this prayer of like, let me just be really helpful. Let me be truly helpful. You show me how I can show up that's going to be the right thing for that moment. And sometimes it almost feels like there's something that comes in that's very different to you. And the way maybe you normally speak or address things. Because, I've had experiences like this working with people where I could tell the Spirit wanted me to say something in a very specific way that maybe would sound angry or like I'm accusing somebody of
or
something.
Judgmental,
whatever. But it was simply like something the Spirit just wanted to address something that people were falling asleep about. And that's, like we said, like that's not a fun thing, but it actually is just what's required. And when you can let it flow through, you still may get like a little uncomfortable because you're not used to that energy, but it's actually, that's what's needed in the moment. And I think the scene, from the movie we just watched, Existence, I just love that scene because it's exactly how it feels. It's a movie where people are plugging into this VR game, and when you show up in the game, you're kind of still you. You're aware of your personality and your name, but in the game you have another role to play that has specific things it must say for the goal to be reached, for the scenes to continue going. And there's a scene where Jude Law first feels that, where he says something that comes through really strongly, and he was like, he didn't know what he was saying. That wasn't me. I don't know what that was.
Right, that's what he says.
It's a really weird energy. But that's just, it was what was needed. And I just love that, because when you can let things just be that way, like you're coming from the prayer and you just let things come out the way they have to come out, that's when you can really, and you watch what's happening, like, oh, that was really helpful. Oh, they needed to hear it that way. They wouldn't have heard it if I had tried to make it sound nice.
Right.
Or sweet, or, oh, this kind of coddling vibe.
Yeah.
Nobody would have heard it.
Yeah,
the message wouldn't have come through.
Yeah, the Spirit doesn't compromise with us. And we can't compromise if we really want to wake up. And if we're here to be helpful to others, then we have to sometimes deliver, the cold glass of water for Spirit.
Or flip the table
table like Jesus. Yeah, I mean, big time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about, I've mentioned to Yuta, the Swami that started the Vedanta centers throughout the world. Swami Vishnu Devananda, up in Canada, apparently when he was alive, he would go out with some of the, disciples, students, whatever, and go be found in town drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette, having an ice cream, all those kinds of things. And it would dynamically bring up people's crap, right? What do you mean? He's a renunciate. He's a Swami. What do you mean he's smoking? What do you mean you saw him drinking a beer? It put people's minds into such spin that was necessary to blast out the idea of what's it to be spiritual. What do you think this is all about? People get so rigid in our thinking. We can get rigid in our thinking that, we just have to sometimes have these things really in our face dynamically, to really see it. People have been signing off on our BS potentially, and we've been telling the story over and over again. One of the movies we also watched is I Heart Huckabees. It's such a great movie. We love it so much. And Jude Law is retelling over and over again this story about Shania Twain and mayonnaise and tuna fish and chicken salad. And, he eventually gets sick because he's in his healing journey with these people, and he's having his world rocked, and he finally sees, and not only sees but feels the intensity of these old dynamics being flushed into awareness. And he literally starts throwing up in a business meeting.
Trying to sell the Shania story.
Trying to sell the story one more time. That had good value for him for a long time. It got him lots of laughs. It got him into places and spaces of possibility in his career that were really helpful, in his mind. And it wasn't working anymore. So, we have these ways that we have manipulated our realities, told ourselves these stories to perpetuate the dream and the asleepness, that if we want to wake up, they got to go bye-bye. And some of them we've been telling for so long, not just seeming lifetime, not just this like, oh, well, I'm 52 years old and I've been telling this story for 20 years. No, maybe 20,000 lifetimes we've been playing this crap out. And how's it working? Not so much. Not so much. So we have to be taken out of the personal into the impersonal, and the healing that's delivered for us. If we have the prayer, please heal my mind, it's going to show up in all kinds of ways. And if you can look at it, we've said this many times in these talks, if you can look at it as this is an answer to my prayer for healing, it's just a lot easier and a lot more gentle. It's a lot less challenging and rough.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, I guess that's just my prayer, and my prayer for everybody else too, that we can all allow it to be smooth and quick, to come from personal to impersonal, that transition comes quickly in the moment as things arise.
Yeah, ease and grace. Ease and grace, and swiftly. Yeah. We do not... Really, we're not on the timeline. You might feel like you're on the timeline, but actually we're not actually in time. And so it does not need to take time for this. It's actually a moment by moment proposition to drop the rocks.
And it's always a call into magnitude.
Always a call into magnitude.
A call from, I'm a small little person, into, oh my God, limitless. I'm a big fire.
Exactly.
That has a function of joy and just lighting up.
Yeah, and that big fire is not Yuta.
No.
That big fire is the impersonal that is blasting through her. And those are two different things. If we were trying to do this as Yuta and Elizabeth, not so much.
Yeah.
But when we get out of the way, the magnitude can come through. So
Wow.
shine your light.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
We need to bask in your glow.
Yeah.
We need to enjoy your radiance with you. And when you give it away, it can expand even more and be a blessing to all. So
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for
thanks
listening.
everyone. It's been a delight. Lots of love.